PSNI Global Alliance has announced this week the formation of a global services committee. The committee aims to standardize the integration service and support for their clients worldwide. This comes after 2 years of PSNI setting out and expanding their network. Really, they started. I want to say the first or second integration firm that they picked up outside of the U.S. was in the U.K., but they've quickly grown that globally. Frank, I want to start with you on this. What sort of standards can PSNI hope to spread globally?
All right, so I'm going to put on my IT person's hat for a couple minutes now.
Oh, this is awesome. Yes, please go ahead.
Because I have an IT background. I'm not one of those wonderful guys who have an audio background who will talk about 60s, because I will sit through those conversations with you. You talk about beautiful music and I will go, okay. Not that I don't like music, but sometimes the depth at which AV people talk about audio just goes straight over me. Right? So I'm an IT person. I'm sorry, forgive me. All right. But IT people are the ones and zeros people, right? And when it comes to AV, I always have a joke that I tell some of my friends. If we are the ones and zeros people, AV people are the people who put emojis next to it. We put love into it. We put feelings into it. We put emotions into it.
Can I steal that?
Yes, absolutely.
I plan to. I plan to steal it.
So if we talk about emotions and feelings, this is my segue into standards. Unfortunately, that's not how standards work, right? Standards need to be based on the lowest common denominator. The biggest issue that I see with a lot of AV standards or attempts at AV standards is in itself a joke, because we can go on a tangent right now talking about AV standards because we don't have standards, right? And the reason we don't have them is because our companies, our engineers, our manufacturers, our integrators are always striving for excellence. Now we're trying to get that amazing product that everybody can agree on. That's not how IT did it. IT got the lowest thing and got people to agree on it, and then we built up on it, right? So I like the fact that PSNI is trying to get together standards for installation and services and all that side of it, but I think we should always aim for the lowest and try to build up on it. Once we do that, IT had Token Ring as a standard at one point. It was a standard. It doesn't make sense logically, but it was a standard. What happens is when the standard does not work, we will have that same group of people come back and say, this is not working. We need to change this, right? But we got to have a starting point. We got to have everybody to agree on something. And that in itself is the definition of a standard, something that's widely accepted. We need to get acceptance. In order to get acceptance, we need more buy-in. Everybody needs to buy in. The big integrators, the mom and pop shops, everybody comes together. So am I saying that you all have to do that? No, absolutely not. You can innovate. You can absolutely go ahead of that. You can do things much better. You can say, hey, I've been doing this for 50 years. I don't need to do it that way. I know how to do it better. But if you come and look at my system, you understand that mine is an upgrade of your standard. And that's how I think it should work. That's how an IT person would think.
So you realize that there are a number of people in the industry who would disagree with you.
I'm sure.
When you say that there are no AV standards.
Yeah, I should probably rephrase it. There are too many AV standards.
Okay,
right?
Well, see, that's a totally different statement, though.
There are way too many, but then that's not a standard, right?
Well, yeah, the whole joke is the nice thing about standards is there's so many to choose from, right?
Yeah.
Coming from an old programmer, and we can argue about which pin is hot on the RS-232 connector.
Absolutely.
Joey, one of the groups that would argue that there are standards is AVIXA. When you talk to groups like PSNI and obviously the Global Alliance and other ones. Other folks that are looking to expand globally and expand the AV experience globally, where can they partner with groups like AVIXA and like CD and other overarching bodies to help not necessarily borrow from your standards, but to take the leadership role that you guys have shown with your standards and with the ANSI accredited standards, but also kind of augment it, like Frank was saying, and maybe make them better in a regional specific, because the U.S. has different standards and different needs than the U.K. does, and then China does, and then India does.
There's a whole mouthful around this. So
I think what Frank, there's a couple things that I want to talk through, and I'm going to bring in that manufacturing background. One of my biggest challenges as a marketer at a manufacturer was that anybody can say anything, and there is no way to double check it. There is no way to say that's wrong, this is right. My favorite was the 100,000 hour versus the 50,000 hour bulb. And they do really different things, and they may have right and wrong for each individual user. But the fact that anybody can just get out and say anything, and that's not the standards that we talk about at AVIXA, that's a very specific thing. That's one of the things that I think is lacking in the industry. You know, you don't have that, like when you go think about your house and the appliances you put in your house, there are standards, right? You just know that you're going to get those. You go to Home Depot, no matter what you look at, you're going to get a standard. And AV is, we're not doing that. From the AVIXA standpoint and the idea of full standards for your entire installation and the entire project that you're working on, I think it's great that the industry is coming together and wants to see more of it. I think it benefits our buyers. And at the end of the day, that's why we're all here, right? Is we have to put in systems that our buyers can count on. And if they work for as long as they say they're going to work, and they meet the client expectation, and they do all those things, we're all doing really good. So the fact that more people are interested in coming together, that's fantastic. You know, what I picked up when I read the PSNI article was the fact that how many of those folks are CTS certified, you know, that are part of that. And so this is the baseline for that. The certifications of having people who really know what they're doing, not just somebody who's like, oh yeah, I know how to do that. I can do that, sure, right? But really knowing that there's an education and a piece behind that people understand. Plus you add the standard to that for the entire system. And I think the industry as a whole moves up together. And I guess the saying goes, a rising tide raises all ships. Is that how that goes?
I think so, yeah. That works. Dawn, final question on this. You work for a multinational corporation. What exactly do companies that do have multiple locations around the globe, what are they looking for from an integrator and from a global partner, should they need one?
So I'm going to back up a half a step, because as Tim knows, and the rest of you might not know, prior to becoming an end user multinational person in the past couple of years, I spent most of my career as an integrator in a very small mom and pop integration firms. And our big selling point, I was director of marketing, so I pushed the hell out of this, was yes, you could bring in your AVI SPLs, or sorry, Frank, your diversifieds or your whomevers, and bring them in that you have working on your other locations. But can you guarantee that every location has the quality of work? Because I can guarantee in our market, our little firm will provide you with quality work that you might get from some of the locations of your big integrator, but you might not. So that was always my selling point working for a mom and pop. Well, now I've completely flipped it. I work for an end user. I work for an end user with 90,000 plus employees around the globe. And I'm in charge of locations around the US and around the globe. And the first thing I did when I got in charge of writing specs and statements of work for going out to bid to integrators was I included must have CTS on staff, preferred CTSI, CTSD, preference given to Apex certified companies. We put right in there that you will be checked not just on your, NEC standards for the electrical work and that kind of stuff. You'll be checked on your AVIXA standards for projection image size and those sorts of things. And I put that right in my documentation. Now, granted, I may not follow around with a light meter and go within a, exact measurement that, yes, you did succeed that. But just the very fact of including that on the specs weeds out the folks that, oh, sure, I could do that. As Joey said, it makes people have a level of craftsmanship and a level of quality that we can then use to select vendors that, I'm here in Baltimore, DC area. If I'm working on a project in California or Huntsville or the UK or Australia, I can find an integrator that will meet a minimum standard of acceptable work by adhering to these standards. And I have a commissioning, back when I was an integrator, I took the How to Be an Apex Company class at Infocom. I have the checklist, and I have it in an app that when I go to a job site, I go through the app on the final walkthrough with the integrator, and I say, okay, I see you did that. I see you did that. Can you fix that? Because it doesn't match the standard. And I can take photo documentation, send it to them on a punch list, and they can take care of it. So, that's a big thing for a company our size to make sure that we're getting quality work. There's less than a dozen of us in charge on the AV team for our entire part of the company worldwide. We're relying on the facilities folks and the IT folks in the various locations to babysit these high-tech rooms. And they might not know what's going on with AV, but if we can get them built remotely to a standard, then at least we know it's not someone didn't terminate a wire correctly. And I've said it to Tim a few times on various shows. The big thing is we love the big integrators that have multiple branches around the world. We love you, Diversified. I was working with some of your guys today at our location here in Baltimore. But with the AVIs, SPLs, and the Diversifieds and the whomevers, all the big names on that list that they publish every year, if you can guarantee every single location has the same standard, I'll work with you all day long. But you have to prove that to me. And I think that PSNI coming up with the standards across their member companies is fantastic, because that gives us a little bit closer to that guarantee. You can hire someone from PSNI Global Alliance and you'll get the same quality of work. So
just so it's been said, Diversified is a member of PSNI. So
yes.
There you go.
Even better.
If I can just add something, and Don, excellent point, Joe. It's so great hearing these things, right? And my previous comments, I'd like to add something, right? The CTS, the CTSD, and the CTSI program are probably some of the most intense learning experiences that a person can have. And I say this as somebody who has more than, probably have like 14 certifications from the Ciscos and the Microsofts. I'm a certification junkie, right? And something that the AVIXA exams and the learning material give you that the others don't, is that they actually try to give you standards, right? So it's a great starting point. So if somebody does, and I will completely support Don and Joe's points to this, if somebody does want to establish standards, I do feel that the CTS program, CTSDs, and the CTSIs, they should be absolutely included and should be a starting point. So
give high five to everybody.
Virtual high five. Yeah.